Are you a fan of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys Radio, and we've got a special treat for you this week. My special guest is Daphne Maxwell Reid, who played Aunt Vivian on the show. It all starts at 8 p.m. Pacific time on KCAA Radio here in Southern California, 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. The podcast and my YouTube drop tomorrow. Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Very special guest. A special guest who you all know, everybody remembers Daphne Maxwell Reid as the iconic TV mom from 1990s. Her 3 seasons as Aunt Vivian on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and she couldn't be more excited when the cast of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunites 30 years later for an unscripted reunion special airing on HBO Max on Thanksgiving weekend. And she also stars in The Business of Christmas, which is coming out on Netflix on December 1st. I mean, Daphne is really a special person. She's what I would call a quintessential Renaissance woman. She's a respected artist. She's a designer. She's an education activist. She worked working from her home in Virginia, happily married to the pioneering TV actor, producer, writer, director, who we all know, Tim Reid, from the fame of WKRP in Cincinnati, Frank's Place, Sister. Daphne Maxwell Reid is living proof that a passion for creativity and a dedication to hard work can ensure a lifetime's worth of success. Welcome to Guys Radio, Daphne Maxwell Reid.
Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Let's start at the beginning. How excited are you about the 30-year reunion of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and how did that all come about?
I am very, very, very excited to see how they've edited it. We had a blast shooting it last month. Will's company called and said, would you like to participate in a reunion? And I don't think any of us said anything but sure. So we all showed up and he feted us well while we were in LA. And we had a blast. There were lots of surprises. He likes surprises. So we had a lot of surprises, and the audience is going to have a lot of surprises. But it was a terrific gathering. It was great to be with everybody at the same time. We're used to being with each other, maybe 1 or 2 at a time, but getting everybody together at the same time was a blast.
Now the show was it was a real breakthrough. I'm a little older than the demo was for that time, so I didn't see it that often, but I remember it, and I went back and watched a few episodes, and I was really inspired because there was one scene between Will and Carlton where Carlton is he's talking about the fact that his dad's not really paying attention to him, and Will basically lets him know that, like, hey, what do you think about my dad? He's not around. And you know, you had the Jeffersons, and then you had the Huxtables with the Cosby Show. Fresh Prince took it to the next level, and you had that kind of fish out of water kid from the urban, city going to the high-end neighborhood, and really laying out a lot of very relevant issues way back then in a fun, very creative way. And I thought what was really sad, though, is that those issues haven't changed that much.
But that's why we're working on our 3rd generation of viewers, because their grandparents watched it when it first came out, and their parents watched it as teenagers. And then now those folks have grown up and have children who are now watching it. I'm thrilled with stopped and called Aunt Vivian by folks who are 70 and folks who are 30 and folks that are 15. It's really, really, it's a grand thing that I was part of that. I'm so honored that I got to work on that show. I didn't want to work on that show when it first started. I was kind of finishing up a couple of back-to-back series with my husband, and we were going to Virginia for a rest. And they said, okay, we had an audition for you for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's a young rapper. And I said, I am not working with a young rapper right now. Thank you. Have a great time. But I get to the farm. I'm lollygagging around in the fall and the show comes on. I said, what a cute show. I loved the fact that they had so many disparate characters.
Yes.
Everybody had their own personality, their own point of view, their own thing, which they solidly kept for all 6 seasons, which I think was just amazing and wonderful to watch bloom.
Hmm. So how did you get on the show? Because you came on about midstream, right?
I came on after 3 years, yes. I got a call at the farm, lollygagging around with my
Mhm.
tractor, and they said, we would like you to come and audition for the role of Aunt Vivian on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And before I hung up the phone, I was already on the plane. I mean, I was ready to go.
Mm.
And I got there, and it was 2 weeks of auditions. I must have had 5 or 6 auditions. And every time I showed up for a callback, there were women there that I have never seen before in my life. So I think they scoured the universe for Aunt Vivian. But by the third audition, I got to audition with James Avery.
Hmm.
And we fell in love. I mean, I loved that man. He was such a wonderful, wonderful person. And we, I guess, clicked because we clicked on through the rest of those auditions and I got the job. I was thrilled, absolutely
Now,
thrilled.
was this a new character?
No, it was the same character, Aunt Vivian. It had been played by someone else before,
Okay.
and I have no idea why she left. I still don't know why she left or what was going on that caused her to leave. In my heart of hearts, I thank her for giving me the opportunity to have that job, but
Got it.
we never discussed why she had
Hmm.
left.
Sure. Okay. And
So
for
it was like a new job for me, but it was the old family just moving on just as comfortably as if I had been there the whole time.
what was it like working with such a talented, eclectic cast?
Well, it wasn't my first rodeo. So it was exciting to see, especially Will, because he had more energy than any 10 people that I've known. And watching him bloom as an actor
Yeah.
was really exciting. And watching the young kids, Tatiana, grow up on television and bloom into the beautiful woman that she is now, it was like I was watching my family grow. It really was an exciting time. Um, the characters that they played became iconic, but
Yes.
the people who embodied those characters are the kindest, sweetest people, and they are not like those characters. Mostly, they're very different than their characters, so they're fine actors as well. And James Avery was just consummate. He was like the rock for the whole group.
Hmm. Interesting. Do you think the characters were selected as archetypes for different types of, the father figure, the uncle figure, the type of son, one son, another son, the aunt, or was it just, a creative, like, let's put these, chemistry type of thing?
I was not there when they did all that selecting, but
Hmm.
it was all built around Will.
Okay.
And I think they needed to cast it so that he would have several different points of view to react to.
Right.
So they did a brilliant job, I think. Thank you, Quincy Jones.
A lot of important names there. I saw that Debbie Allen directed, right?
She directed the pilot and
Yeah.
some of the first. I was not there when she was directing, but she has worked with us on other projects that
Mm.
my husband and I have done. So I
Oh,
know Debbie
fantastic.
and Felicia very well.
Okay, when I've interviewed some cast members from The Sopranos, another iconic American
Yes.
TV series, and they, to a person, have said, "Oh my goodness, we were so close, and we still stay in touch." When you guys were working together on the show, was there that type of family chemistry there? And then afterwards, how did you guys, and how do you stay in touch?
While we were doing the show, there was a chemistry, but it was an on-set chemistry, a very warm chemistry on set and in the confines of the show. When we left on Friday nights, the kids went off and had a life. James went off and had a life, and I went off and had a life. So it wasn't as though we were hanging out together. James and his wife and Tim and I used to hang out a little bit together. We used to travel together. We've had some wonderful times together. But the younger kids were the younger kids. We weren't going to hang out the same places they were hanging out. But
Got it.
since the show was over, we've been through weddings and we've been through births and we've been through funerals, and we have
Sure.
been very close, very, very close.
So let's talk about the upcoming special a little bit more. What's the idea behind it? What's going to be new? Can you give us a little tip on any surprises or not?
No.
It's okay. It sounds like fun, and it was Will's idea. And
It was Will's idea, and I can tell you that he introduced, because the photo's already been off, he introduced the young man who is going to be uh, working with him on the new series of Fresh Prince. That's a dramatic take on Fresh Prince that I think is
great.
going on the Peacock Network. So he was really excited about that, and we got to meet the young man who did the kind of test pilot on his own that Will saw and said, let's do this together.
Fantastic. Okay, let's take and again, that's on Thanksgiving weekend, HBO
Right.
Max. Uh,
Yes.
why don't we, my special guest on Guys Guys Radio is Daphne Maxwell Reid, and she is a Renaissance woman, and I'm so glad she's here. Let's go in the Wayback Machine. Where did you grow up, and how did you kind of make your way towards acting? I know you were one of the, if not the first, black homecoming queens for your university, as well as one of the first African American cover models for Glamour. How did
I
you,
was the first.
the first, okay, sorry. How did you get started in the business?
I grew up in the projects in New York City, but my focus was on education, and I liked all the cultural things that were going on in New York. So, of course, I worked when I was a teenager as an usher at the New York State Theater, where I saw a lot of great theater, and used to sing with the All City junior high and high school chorus. So I got to sing in Carnegie Hall and the Philharmonic Hall. I had little tastes of the arts, but there was never an inclination to make the arts a way of life. I couldn't see enough examples of a Black woman um, doing that and making a living. So we focused on education, and I went to college to be a teacher
Really?
and a Spanish teacher. And I got there, went to Northwestern University, which was at that time not very integrated. I was one of 36 Black students in a population of about 5,000. So it was an interesting turn of culture for me, having grown up in New York City, which is totally multicultural. Um, I learned that I was Black at Northwestern University, where they kept throwing it up in my face.
Right.
But it, I guess, didn't bother me how they viewed me, because I knew who I was and I had the strength to stand on my own 2 feet. And I just thought they were ignorant. So I went on about my life. I was um, my junior high school teacher from New York kind of recommended me to do something for 17 magazine because I had gotten a scholarship, and they did what they used to call the Real Girl issue in January of 1967, which was my freshman year at college. And I got to be a full page on the large format 17 magazine. And from that, I was discovered by the modeling agent of the day, who was very well known. Eileen Ford had an agency that
Okay.
was just very well known. And she asked me to be a part of her roster. Well, I was living in Chicago at the time going to school, and she was in New York. And do you hear all that noise out there?
It's okay.
Okay. So I was going back and forth between New York and Chicago doing modeling. And on one of those trips, I got a picture taken in like 15 minutes at a studio and went back to school. And when I walked past the newsstand that fall, I saw that I was on the cover of Glamour magazine.
Wow.
And I
That's a
was
surprise.
the first Black woman on the cover of Glamour magazine, but I had no idea I was shooting a cover.
Wow.
It was a quick thing.
How did you feel?
So it was exciting. It was funny to me. It was really, well, why didn't they tell me? That kind of thing.
And why didn't they tell you?
I have no idea.
Maybe they
I
thought it
don't,
would make you too nervous or
it,
something like that, but
no,
you
it
seem very
was,
chill.
I don't think that they planned it. I think it happened and they liked the picture and they used it as a cover.
Okay.
I had already been Northwestern's first Black homecoming queen. So I had had press before that, and I had done a lot of editorial modeling for different magazines, but never looked toward modeling as a career, didn't look toward acting as a career, although I had spent probably a number of Saturdays in my high school years with a group called the Group Theater Workshop that became the Negro Ensemble Company.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Robert Hooks was running that. And dear, dear friend, that was the only acting I had done until I graduated from college, was living in Chicago, and started doing commercials. And with commercials came the idea, oh my goodness, I could make a living at this.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, Robert Conrad from the original Wild Wild West,
Yeah.
and you can't
Yep.
knock this battery off my
Right.
shoulder. This is for the older folks who know
I
what I'm
know.
talking
Bob Bob Black Sheep and all,
about.
right? Yeah.
Yes, Robert Conrad did a show in Chicago called The Duke, and he hired me to play a part, and it became a recurring part. And that was my introduction to becoming a working actress. And from that, I moved on out to Los Angeles, and Robert Conrad was doing another show. So I got to be on that show and got an agent. And then the blessings just started flowing. I just kept working through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And I had a wonderful career.
It sounds like it because I was going to ask you about what was the journey like being as an actor, a struggling actor for many, a woman, because it's tougher for a woman, and then for an African American, even tougher. So it sounds like you just rolled.
Well, I was in the right place at the right time. I think the early 70s and the mid 70s and the late 70s, there were a lot of looking to bridge the gap of no blacks on television. They had a black show, but they didn't know how to integrate the black actors into what they were already doing because they didn't have any idea how to relate the culture, I'm sure, or whatever. But it was a time where they were using light skinned Black people to kind of ease people into watching Black people on television. And I happened to be a light skinned Black girl who was not Black enough for a lot of Black things. And I was Black, so I couldn't do a lot of white things, but
Right.
the timing was perfect. And I happened to get job after job after job. And on each job, I looked behind the camera to make sure I knew exactly what everybody was doing so I could enhance how they made me look.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
very smart.
and I had a very prolific career, just one step at a time.
So after Fresh Prince, where did you go from there? And how did I hope this isn't a controversial question, but how did Fresh Prince end? And was there an ending of the show, the storyline, if you will? And then where did everybody go from there, particularly yourself, obviously?
Well, I went back to the farm, which was a good place to go. Um, Everybody knew that the last year was going to be the last year because
Okay,
Will told us we're doing one more year
got
and
it.
then I'm moving on. So he gave us an opportunity to get our ducks in a row, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
and to plan what our next move was going to be. So the young actors were planning what they were going to do next. I had already had a 15 and 20 year career on television. So I wasn't concerned about making a plan. I was going back to Virginia to relax, and we had built a studio in Virginia, so relaxation was out of the question. We built Virginia's first full service film studio,
Okay.
and I became a studio head. So I was very busy helping other people make projects, helping my husband do his movies and his television series. And we happened to do one for Showtime that I loved, and it was called Links,
I
and it was
remember it.
shot
I remember
at
it.
our studio, and it was a hoot to shoot.
People don't realize that there's other filming taking place outside of LA and New York. There's your studio, Screen Gems, I think, has a big operation in
Now in
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
they
when
moved.
we first built the studio in 1997, there were not independent studios,
Hmm.
and we kind of pioneered that kind of independence, but the whole industry changed because not only was Canada giving away money to come shoot in Canada,
Hmm.
but then other states started giving incentives to come shoot. And we could not get our legislature to do those incentives. So a lot of our clients wouldn't come to us because we had no state incentives.
Right.
So we had to kind of make the studio work for our independent projects, which we did. And every once in a while, Steven Spielberg would come and shoot a couple of scenes at the studio. But after a while, it got very difficult to be creative and to sell and distribute and produce with just my husband and I. So we said, okay, time's up.
Okay, got
And
it.
we sold the studio. But it was very successful while it was there. And we've moved on to a little bit more calm lifestyle. And he still has a smaller studio and is doing wonderful documentaries and teaching. And he just put up a new network called gfntv.com. And he's programming a network, which is something he's really good at and has lots of content for it. He calls himself a content creator, which is what he does.
Mhm.
And with all the different outlets that there are now, there's a real need for content.
That's very true. How did you guys actually meet? And you've been married for close to 40 years?
Almost, yeah.
And what are the keys, in your opinion, Daphne, to a successful marriage and a successful Hollywood type of marriage?
Well, we were both married to other people when we met,
Okay.
and we were working together in Chicago. I didn't much notice him. He didn't much notice me. It was just somebody else I was working with. But when I moved out to California, he was out here, and some of our Chicago buddies all got together. And one said, "Do you remember that guy, Tim Reed?" I'm going, vaguely. I don't. And he gave him my phone number. And he called me, and we had a quick, supposedly 5-minute date. And we were both divorced by that time. And the little 5-minute date lasted 5 hours. And then it just bloomed from there. And that was in January. It'll be 40 years ago that we reconnected, and 38 years of marriage.
And what,
Now,
congratulations,
thank you.
congratulations, by the way.
In
And
Hollywood, 38 years of marriage is about 172 of
yeah,
normal
so I
people.
was going to
But
ask you.
um, our relationship was based on mutual respect. And you can have the love and all that burning love that all these young folks have. That fire gets a little dim sometimes, but it's okay. You have other things that really support each other rather than all that fire. And to have respect for the person that you're with, to learn how to fight fair, to, let's see, what other advice I would give. Listen. Of relationships are broken up because one party won't listen. Compromise is a must. There are no two people who can live together and have the same vibe all the time. Sorry, two people don't exist that are that mutually connected. So yes, there are a lot of different ways that you can support each other. And that's all you need is the idea that you wish the best for the other person.
Sounds like very sound advice. Thank you. I've been married 10 years. I waited a long time and I found the right person. And I asked her after 3 dates, I said, what do I need to be a good boyfriend? Because I've had a lot of relationships and obviously I'm here, so they didn't work out. And she said, she gave me the best advice I've ever gotten.
But
She
you say,
said, pay attention. I said, anything else? She said, no.
act on the attention that you pay. Uh, my husband would say, you just have to learn two words. Yes, dear. And when you learn those two words, everything will be fine.
I'm sorry. So, what's it like collaborating then? Because you're in a creative business and you both have your own avenues that you go on when you do your work. And getting together, is there, there's obviously all creators have some type of ego thing. How does the ebb and flow go between you and Tim?
Tim is the very creative dreamer. He just creates. He wakes up in the morning, lifts his head off the pillow and says, I got an idea. I'm the person who says, okay, let's make this idea work.
Hmm.
So I do the business side, he does the creative side, and we don't cross paths. I mean,
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
try to do creative, and he doesn't try to do business. He respects the fact that I can figure out the business part of it. He says, now, if I want to do this, what does that take? And I said, well, it'll take this, 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 and this. Can we do that? I'm going, yeah, we can do that this time. That's
Got
how
it.
it works.
Okay. Can you talk about any of the other acting roles that you've had that are very significant to you, Daphne, since Fresh Prince? Because you've had a lot. What
Oh,
really,
before
really,
Fresh Prince
no,
were,
no, before or after, whatever, that
oh,
really
before.
are in your heart?
Oh, Frank's Place,
Okay.
one of my favorite shows that my husband and his partner Hugh Wilson created. It was a show that took place in New Orleans, and it was rich. It was just a beautifully done show. It was the first half-hour sitcom that was shot not before a live audience. It was shot film style, and it was rich with tradition and flavor and color and stories of Black people that had not been exposed before on television. And
Good.
that was probably one of my favorite roles. I was a mortician, Hannah Griffin, and kind of a love interest to the guy who ran the joint, Frank, who was played by Tim.
Okay.
So we've played opposite each other many times. We followed that with a show called Snoops that we shot out of DC and Los Angeles. And he created that show and we starred in it together. It was kind of like a Nick and Nora kind of um, investigative family. But he was a professor and I worked at the State Department. And it was just a fun show to shoot. And then Lynx was one of my favorite shows. I got to play a hooker, which
That's fun, though,
I
right?
found I was very good at. Uh, so it was so well written and directed that I had a ball on that show. And then after Fresh Prince, I did a lot of little things like a cute little show that did not make it on the air, but it was called Exposed. And it was a TV newscaster um, who was doing just bizarre things. So it was a very funny show written by Peter Torkvey. And I had a ball doing that show too, because I can sit there and do the news when it's
Mhm.
called for.
Now, there
But
was a movie about Harriet Tubman, and
yes,
even from myself, and I'm not African American, obviously, but I lived in Harlem for the past 10 years, and I used to walk past her statue almost every day. And I read up on her, and between her and Frederick Douglass, I lived on Frederick Douglass Boulevard. I
mhm.
really realized, though, these people were heroes and are so underappreciated. And it must have been special to work on a movie about her. And $20 bill with her on it.
I have a copy of that $20 bill.
It's
They
coming?
had they had a stamp.
Ah,
And they just stamped it right over the middle of the $20 bill. I treasure that. But I had the honor of auditioning for a role in that movie because they shot it right here in Virginia. and Cynthia Erivo was starring in it. And there was a Black woman who was directing it, and there was a Black woman who was producing it. And I said, yes, let us get this going. I had a very small part, and I felt so honored to be part of that cast. It was so well written and so well directed and so beautifully shot that I mean, I'm as proud of that as I am of Fresh Prince.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
Harriet was just a great introduction to that story. There are many, 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 many stories that we are not exposed to because our school books were not written with us in mind. So there's going to be a lot of information that's going to be new to a lot of folks, except the Black community. We
Hmm.
live with this history. We
Sure.
know we helped to build America just as much as anybody
Absolutely.
else did.
Yes.
So we're going to tell these stories now that we have the power to do that.
Great.
We're only lacking the power to green light movies, and that's coming soon. But
Good.
we are now behind the camera. We are department heads. We are directors. We are DPs. We are stars. We can
Hmm.
carry movies. They see that now, and they're finally getting ready to monetize that idea.
Fantastic. First of all, my special guest, Daphne Maxwell Reid, once again on Guys Radio. I mentioned that she's a Renaissance woman, so why don't we talk about some of your other mega talents? You're a photographer. You've got some
Yes.
photography books. You love to take pictures of doors. And your dad, I think, was a photographer. So talk to us about that, your travels around the world, how you see through the camera and decide what you want to shoot, why doors, why Cuba, why some of the other countries you went to.
My father was an amateur photographer. I mean, he would dearly wanted to be a photographer, so he always shot pictures of the family. We had outings all over the place. Going to Central Park, going to church, we just always were getting shot by my dad. And he gave us cameras as kids. I had a little brownie camera probably when I was 8 or 9 years old and was able to take pictures then. Um, Throughout my life, and I've lived a wonderful, rich life, I have never been without a camera or a sewing machine. They go with me everywhere.
Hmm.
And about, 15 years ago, I realized that I had been taking a lot of pictures of doors. And I didn't know why until I sat down and had to analyze it. I went to college to be a teacher, but ended up changing my major to interior design and architecture because I was really very interested in the details of architecture. So that was probably living in the back of my mind when I traveled for all the work that we did. Tim and I had the pleasure of doing things like being on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and he would send us, oh, we're going to Turkey next week. Okay, let's go to Turkey. I mean, we're ready, we're packed. So we
Absolutely.
had lots and lots and lots of travel. We traveled, the two of us traveled extensively, even without television. So I love going to a new place and seeing the cultural aspect of whatever I happen to be. I like to see the textures, the foods, the colors, the architecture, and the rhythm of the people in those countries. So that's what I open myself up to. So I take pictures of craftsmanship, which happens to be something that doors hold very much.
Okay.
And the craftsmanship of doors is just not just how it's made, but what it represents, because doors are a metaphor for life.
Right.
They represent adventure and curiosity and opportunity. So it dawned on me that's why I take pictures of doors, because I'm interested in making sure that people notice all the details in their lives that make their journeys rich. I've had some great journeys, but it's not getting from A to B that interests me. It's what's A and B all along the way that has really made my life rich. So I want to encourage people to do that by noticing details. So I started a whole collection of doors and started with a gallery showing of some of my um, photographs, and people bought them. And I said, "Oh, I could do this as a
Nice.
business. Yeah, I could make this work." So that's how it started.
Now you've got 5 books. What are the locations? I know Cuba is one of them.
Well, the first book is multi locations. I
Okay.
mean, the first book includes Italy and Cape Verde and South Africa and France and it a whole bunch of places that I went. My first book, and it was trying to see if I could write a book, if I could get somebody interested in the journey. And I did that. And the next one that I wrote was a photographic trip that I took with a group of photographers all down the west side of the Cuban island. I had been to Cuba about 3 times, and this trip I went outside of Havana and Santiago, where I usually went, and caught the richness of that culture and how, in their poverty, in their circumstance, they create art out of whatever they have.
Right.
And the exuberance of the people there and the lust for life is just amazing to see. So I got to photograph that one and I journaled that book so that each city that we went to, I talked about the people and I talked about the flavors and the architecture, which is all different all over the island. So that was an interesting book. So that was my second one. My third one was a train trip I took. I had been in Venice on an annual trip with a group called Save Venice Foundation. And I said, I'm going to take a side trip. And I got on the train and I went to Belgium. And I went to Antwerp and Bruges in Belgium. And I just walked and walked and walked. And I took pictures of doors. And it was fascinating. The whole architecture of Belgium was so different from Italy and so different from other places I had been. And then my fourth book was France. And I was visiting with the Virginia, some kind of an art group that had a setup in Auvillard, France. And I stayed there and then went on my way through other cities in France and did a whole collection on France. So those were
Wow.
my 4 books. And then my fifth book turned out to be a cookbook.
Yes, I wanted to get to that because we're running short on time. But let's get into the
Okay.
cooking. So your cookbook is called Grace plus Soul plus Mother Wit.
Okay,
What's your
Motherwit.
Mother Wit? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your philosophy on food? Great, beautiful. Grace plus Soul plus Mother Wit.
Yes.
So you have
This is
recipes
a
there, and you have
memoir.
okay.
This is a memoir. It's a memoir that it's a cookbook that's spiced with personal memories. So these are 40 years of collected recipes that from people that I worked with, from people that I had encountered on my travels, from people that mean something to me, family members and dear friends we shared meals with. Um, I've been collecting these recipes for many, many years. And finally, my girlfriend said, "When are you going to get those recipes off your computer?" And I said, "Oh, I have finally decided how I want to do it." So each recipe has a story at the beginning of it, telling why I have this recipe there. And at the bottom of the recipe, it has the utensils that you'll need to prepare this. And there's humor and there's pathos and there's memories of wonderful people who are no longer with us. So there's a lot of richness. And I tell you how to set up a kitchen, what to keep in your kitchen. If you never cooked before, this is a good starter cookbook. I give you
What
lots of information.
so what's your go-to dish? And what's
My
Tim's
go-to
favorite?
dish is it's just quick Italian food. I mean, I'll pasta it up with whatever's in the refrigerator. Cut it up, put some onions, garlic, and olive oil in it, and start with the spices. And hopefully, I've got some live basil sitting in a jar, and I'm ready to go.
How about what's your philosophy of the balance between taste and health? Because out here, I notice I'm in California now. In New York, you can get anything, and it's all fun. In California, every restaurant has all the options, everything,
Yes.
vegan, vegetarian, you can get it all anywhere. What's your philosophy about the importance or not of, health versus taste, or is it just moderation or what? What's your point of view, Daphne?
My point of view is health is personal and everybody's different, and be smart. That's all. If you want to indulge in something, do it to a minimum.
Hmm.
Otherwise, enjoy your meal. And if it's portion control that you need, just put a little bit on the plate.
Sound advice. Last but not least, actually, there's two more areas we want to touch on. One is clothing design. You have some
Ah,
wonderful clothes, Chinese silk brocade jackets, it's like wearable art. Tell us how you got into designing clothing, putting all that together, and your vision. You've got some beautiful on your website, beautiful face masks, and like every realize that, you know what? I think we're going to be wearing face masks for a little
for
while
a
longer.
while. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
people are like, okay, I'll buy some of these and some of these, and I'm not going to say it's you know, it's utilitarian, but also there is a fashion aspect of it because
Oh,
it's on
there
your
is.
face.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. And right now I'm this week it's vote, vote, vote. I've got vote
Okay.
fabric.
Hmm.
So
Good.
those have been going well. Um, I've been sewing since I was 9 years old. My mother was a seamstress and she sewed for other people, and she made a business out of it. I just sewed for myself for most of my life. And about 6 years ago, my husband was doing a fashion show to raise some funds for his institute. And he says, I want you to do a line of those things that you've been wearing and people have been stopping you in the street. I started
Good.
making the
Good.
Chinese silk brocade coats for myself maybe 15 years ago. And every time I wore one, somebody would stop and say, oh, where did you get that? I said, I made it. They said, oh, make me one. I'm going, no. So finally, he
You're a
said,
businesswoman.
uh,
You're a good
I'm not going to
businesswoman.
be sitting here at this sewing machine just knocking out. No, I got other things I'm interested in doing. But with the fashion show, I made a dozen of them. They walked the runway. They bought them off the runway. And I said, oh, they do like these. I said, but I'm going to do it as a custom business. So it's a custom business. It's not cheap, but I sell a lot of them and I still make a lot of them. And then the next year, I did a line of linen swing coats because that's another very popular coat that anybody can wear. And they went like hotcakes. So I'm
Great.
still doing those by request.
And one of the most important things that you do, not where I know we're talking about it last, but you do educational advocacy. So could you share a little bit about that with us, Daphne?
I mentor a lot of students. I was on the board of a college for about 8 years, where we had to decide how to bring the best education for the best price to our students at an HBCU college, Virginia State University. And when I left that board, because I had been an advocate for them and I was a very visible person around, they said, you can't be a member of the board, but you're going to be an emeritus member. I said, that means you can call on me at any time, right? He said, yeah. So
Awesome.
that's what I do. I just do whatever they need done that needs to go out over the air.
Well, Daphne Maxwell Reid, you are a Renaissance woman, but also you're a very classy lady, very
Thank
smart and you're very nice. And I'm really honored. And you're inspirational. So I'm really honored to meet you. You're my first video guest. I I didn't do a shared screen. I'm in a little box up in the corner, and you're my entire screen. And I'm going to leave it that way because you deserve it. And we'll take it from there. I don't know if everybody else is going to get that treatment, but you are because you're wonderful, really.
Thank you
So
so much, Robert. And
so
thank you for inviting me.
my pleasure. Tell everybody where they can find out more about you. And once again, the Fresh Prince reunion, 30-year reunion, is on
It's
Thanksgiving weekend.
Thanksgiving weekend on HBO Max. But you can find out all about me by just putting my name with a .com there, DaphneMaxwellReid.com. And
Thank you.
don't put a lot of extra letters in that Daphne. It's only 6 letters long, Daphne. Leave it at that. Maxwell Reid, REID.com.
Thank you so
Check
much,
it out.
Daphne.